For decades, pharmacovigilance operated as a reactive sentinel. The system was designed to sound the alarm only after adverse events occurred in the patient population. This approach relies heavily on spontaneous reporting systems. Safety analysts monitor databases like the FDA's FAERS or the WHO's Vigibase, collecting individual case safety reports from doctors and patients. This timeline illustrates the traditional monitoring cycle. A drug hits the market, and the waiting begins. After patients experience harm, cumulative reports generate a confirmed safety signal, triggering a retrospective regulatory response, like a label update, long after the initial exposure. With accelerated regulatory approval pathways and complex biologic therapies, this systemic latency carries an increasing human cost. The alternative requires structural prediction. We map vulnerabilities during Phase 2 and 3 clinical trials, embedding targeted mitigations before the drug is released. Relying on a system where patient harm serves as the primary prerequisite for safety data creates an inherent bottleneck in public health protection. The solution replacing this latency is health hazard analysis, or HHA. This methodology does not originate in pharmacology. It is adapted directly from high-stakes engineering disciplines, specifically aerospace manufacturing and food safety protocols. Traditional post-market monitoring catalogs what went wrong. Health hazard analysis evaluates what could go wrong, systematically analyzing physical and chemical hazards across the entire product lifecycle. Applying engineering principles to pharmaceutical development moves the discipline from firefighting adverse events to forecasting them. This table contrasts the structural mechanics of the two safety frameworks. Traditional spontaneous reporting operates with a critical mathematical flaw known as the denominator problem. We gather isolated reports of harm, but without knowing the total exposure data, the true rate of risk is difficult to calculate accurately. Mitigation interventions are deployed after market entry, relying almost entirely on broad population-level statistics. Health hazard analysis reverses this sequence. It utilizes preclinical data to build specific predictive hazard models, ensuring risk mitigations are designed and tested during clinical trials. Instead of relying on generalized label updates, HHA maps specific patient vulnerabilities directly tied to the drug's exact mechanism of action. This forces pharmaceutical manufacturers to physically design and embed mitigation strategies early in the development pipeline, rather than treating safety as a post-market administrative task. To translate theoretical risks into physical controls, safety scientists rely on failure mode and effects analysis, or FMEA. This process diagram maps the operational life cycle of a high-alert chemotherapy drug. FMEA forces analysts to evaluate every sequential node for vulnerabilities, from the manufacturing facility, through transport and pharmacy storage, right down to bedside administration. This risk matrix illustrates a breakdown at the pharmacy storage node. The analysis flags similar packaging between different dose strengths as a high-probability, high-severity failure mode. Identifying this flaw allows facilities to preemptively deploy engineering controls, such as strict barcoding technology and independent double checks, before a nurse ever dispenses a vial. The framework also adapts hazard analysis critical control points, HACCP, to physical supply chains. This establishes operational gates, like mandatory cold chain verification for temperature-sensitive biologics. FMEA and HACCP ensure that theoretical pharmacological toxicities are actively neutralized by physical and administrative controls. The FDA approval of the first CAR T-cell therapies provided a documented test case for these proactive HHA methodologies. Standard post-market surveillance operates far too slowly to manage the severe, rapid-onset immune reactions associated with these engineered cells. Long before human trials commenced, hazard models evaluated the mechanism of action and identified cytokine release syndrome as a high-probability, high-severity threat. This flowchart outlines the stringent risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, dictated directly by that predictive data. The protocol required any certified healthcare facility to physically stock the specific reversal agent, tocilizumab, on site prior to initiating any patient infusion. Regulators preempted widespread harm by institutionalizing readiness before a single commercial dose was administered. Complex active therapies require an equally active safety architecture. Conversely, the opioid epidemic illustrates the catastrophic cost of relying on reactive pharmacovigilance. Applying modern hazard analysis retroactively to the crisis exposes a cascade of predictable systemic failure modes that were ignored for years. This flowchart tracks the administrative failures of the opioid prescription lifecycle. Providers were authorized to issue default 30-day prescriptions without utilizing targeted questionnaires or active surveillance to confirm clinical necessity. The manufacturing failure was equally severe. The physical formulation lacked abuse deterrent properties, rendering the product vulnerable to crushing and misuse. Modern corrective actions finally implemented mandatory critical control points, such as the direct integration of prescription drug monitoring programs to intercept excessive dispensing. This tragedy established a new rule. Patient safety requires actively anticipating and engineering against predictable misuse, rather than just analyzing intended clinical outcomes. Today, modern health hazard analysis actively accelerates risk prediction by processing massive volumes of real-world data through artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms analyze electronic health records to define safety phenotypes. They map patient characteristics, such as specific CYP450 polymorphisms, that carry a statistically verified risk for severe drug toxicity. This diagram illustrates how natural language processing scans unstructured clinical notes at the hospital level to extract isolated data on near misses, medication errors intercepted moments before reaching the patient. AI provides hazard models with detailed blueprints of systemic vulnerabilities that remain invisible to traditional post-market reporting databases. Global agencies, including the FDA and the EMA, now move toward continuous benefit risk assessment. Health hazard analysis does not discard the yellow card or MedWatch systems. It integrates these reactive tools into a far more rigorous, dynamically updated predictive model. To implement safety by design, pharmaceutical organizations must embed toxicologists and safety scientists into the earliest phases of drug development. By integrating proactive engineering controls with continuous post-market surveillance, we construct a resilient safety ecosystem. We build a framework where patient harm is anticipated and prevented, not merely documented.